Okay, so I've got my objects drawn on my page that I want to then make into blocks. And it's really important you realise that these objects are all drawn one-to-one. So they're for placing on a page, not for working in model space. And anyhow, you'll see when we convert them, though, into a file, they will be in model, and that's where it can get a little bit confusing. So I might actually start with the blocks on the left, or the objects on the left, that I'll turn into blocks, and that should give you a good idea how paper space blocks would work. And when I select those, you can see pressing escape to cancel and selecting it again, so you can see it's got the grips, which tells us there are no commands running. And if I then type the shortcut B and then enter, that will make a block. Clicking, so just doing that again, clicking create on the ribbon does exactly the same thing. And it's a shame, this seems to be cutting off my screen, so on the recording, if you notice that it's only going up to here, sorry about that, but it should get the parts you need. So here again, click and create. And then I'll give this a name, so I'll call it scale 50 is probably enough, or maybe even better, scale bar. We could call it graphical scale, as long as you know what it is. It's not a bad idea to choose an insertion point, so if you click pick point, you can choose a point you're going to use to place this, and for a scale bar, I suppose point on the object might make sense. And make sure you've got that option there, convert to block chosen, click OK, and that now is a block. And so as a block in AutoCAD, you can only insert that in the file you're working in. So there you can see is my scale bar block, and I can insert that, of course, into this file. Click insert there, shortcut I, enter. Yes, unless you use a template, that's the other option. And I'll show you templates after this. But then also, you can, of course, export your blocks to a file so that you can then insert them into other files. So to do that, the simple way is to select the block after you've made it, and then type the shortcut W, enter, and that's the shortcut for write block. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's write block to a file. So technically, there's no such thing as a block file. This is just creating another drawing file that's going to have all of those things from the block in it. So I'll choose my folder, well, I'll make this one so you can get to it, but of course it's a really good idea for you to make your own, because it's nice to have a bit of your own style with even these technical things. So I'll put it into AutoCAD library though, and we'll stick it into, well, let's make a new folder. I'm sick of using these old folders. So I'll make a new one called 2019 blocks. So I didn't hear that, but yes, otherwise I'll put it in. But anyhow, that'll do. So I'll click save, and I'm going to leave everything else as it is. So clicking OK, making sure, really important, it's on millimetres for the insert units. So now, if I go to a new file, let's do that. Of course, always using AutoCAD ISO if you're choosing from these default templates. Just want to show you, if I go and insert that, I'm going to click Insert, Browse, and then go to Find it. In here, it's going to be tiny, because remember, it's been scaled to be on the page. So if you're working with these blocks in model space, they're of course going to be really small. That would need to be 50 times bigger to be the right size. But if I work with it on a page, it'll be a much more workable size. We don't care about this viewport, but if I go and insert it on a page, you'll see the size is right, because that's one-to-one. So I just want to make that clear. Again, it's blocks that we're making from paper space. And actually, I also want to open up the file. So I'm going to show you, if I go and open that file, how it works. So looking at that folder. Okay, so notice how, even though I made it from paper space, it puts the objects into model space. And that's really important, because if you're inserting a block from a drawing file, it's got to come from model space. Well, it should come from model space. So if you've got it, say you've just had a file, and see what a lot of people will do to make a block, instead of using WBlock, they'll just save it as a new file, which works if you've drawn it in model space. So they might have drawn a kitchen sink or something. That's right. Yeah. So if you do save as from paper space, then it generally won't work if you try to insert that into another file. Oh, if you wanted to insert into another file, yeah, that's the way to make sure, yeah, use WBlock, yeah, that's it. So, yeah, yep, sure. Oh yeah, so the question was, how do I make that north line thick? Okay, so it's simple, layers. So I've got a layer called Untitled, which I've used actually for my North Point lines. And then I've got another one, Untitled Heavy, and that's 0.5. Yeah, I'm going to go through that with the template, which I'll do next, because I'll look at layers for the template. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so but the question was, yeah, is there a guide for the line weights, or what standard line weights you should use? The answer is no, not really, but there are guidelines and convention, and I'll definitely go over all of that, and you can easily work it out once you understand the basic principles. Okay, so I'll just make another simple block. So again, selecting the North Point, and so you can go straight to typing W, enter, and then make a block as you go at the same time as you use WBlock, and it works.
Wait, what, did you want B?
Yeah, no, I did W. Just W. So this isn't a block. So I can go straight to, yep, WBlock, and make it into a block at the same time.
Why wouldn't you do that? Oh,
Yeah, it just saves a step. Yep, so you can do that. Absolutely, nothing wrong with that. Yes, yes, so I want, yep, that on objects because I don't have a block yet. Yeah, that's right. That's good. So yeah, so I'll choose pick point, and I'll make the centre of my North Point my insertion point because I want to, yeah, because I want to be able to rotate it around that point later when I'm placing it. Yes, so then that's a bit tricky because you've got to go and use the file name. That's exactly right. It's good enough. Yep, so here, if I click Browse, then I can give the name for my new drawing file, and at the same time, this will give the name for the block. So they are two separate things. So I'm going to call this, yeah, well, CC is what I stick in front of all my blocks because Colour Caddy, which is my old business name, which is going, it's going to be gone by middle of the year. I've got a new one, but I'll stick with that for now. And what's my new business name? It was a really good one. What is it again? I've got a new one. Anyhow, I'll come up with it again. So CC North Point will do. And I'll just click Save, and that's right. Just come back to me. Okay, yeah, you'll see it's a much better business name, which I'll tell you all about. Anyhow, so I'll click OK. And then you can see if I select that, it's all one object. And if you look at it in Properties, it is a block, just like any other block. So I can insert that in here, go to Insert, and find it in that list. Or if you go to More Options, click on the down arrow there to find it. And of course you can see it selected there. And it's good to know that because often when you place blocks like this, you'll want to tick that option for rotation. Because of course if it's a North Point, you'll often need to rotate that in different directions. Another little tip there. Yep, yep. So, have you ever tried to use this one for scale? No. Don't try. I've tried for years, literally 30 years. I've been trying to get that one to work. Since the early days of AutoCAD, it's never been very useful. The others are both good. So for insertion point, you'll want to be able to specify that on screen. So it's good to tick that option most of the time. And then rotation, as you saw, that's useful for many blocks. But then the scale one, it's just too sensitive. So I'll show you what happens. If I try to place this, you can see there, it is scaling, but I've only moved the cursor a little bit and it's gone, you know, really huge. So I find it hard to use. Things that are one-to-one, you can see it's at least workable, but objects that are bigger or that are drawn not at one-to-one, you find it's very difficult to make that option work. But the others are good. So insertion point and rotation. So that's basic blocks. You just got those little things to remember. And it's good to remember there are three things you've got to give a block to make it work. And I might even just show you again if I start with this title block, and then type. I'm actually going to start with a block because it's a bit simpler. B enter, of course, brings back that dialog box, and then you can see you've basically got 3 things to remember. And it helps to remember that because there's one that you'll often forget. So you've got the objects, of course. You're never going to forget that. You're going to choose the things that you want to make into a block. The other one's the name. Oh, B. Yep, yep. So the second one's the name, and you're usually not going to forget that either. You've got to name the block to be able to bring it back. But the one that's easy to forget is the insertion point. Right? Because if you don't pick it, it'll still work with 0, 0, but it's generally better to choose a point that you're going to use for insertion. That's why it's good to remember those 3 things that need to go in to make a block. So, yes, that's the next thing. So, yes, so if you want to make a block with attributes, there are 2 options. You can either make the block first and then go and edit it and add the attributes while you're editing it. That does work, but it's probably easier, especially at first, to make the attributes and then turn it all into a block. So, under here, we've got the little drop-down menu under block, or where it says block, and then you can click there, I think it's this button here, define attributes. Okay, so this gives a little chance to look at text as well, and the size of your text, especially when you're working with different scales, is probably the thing that causes the most problems for people. So that's why I suggest using annotative as an option, and it's really helpful most of the time. In this instance, though, I'm going to say turn it off, because you should have a text type from what you've done before that's going to be a good starting point. And here, 3.5. Well, can you tell, does anyone know why that's a good starting point for text on a page? Yeah, 2.5 would be okay as well. So we just need something that's in the vicinity, because I'm going to fine-tune the height. You can see there it's quite hard to adjust it. It starts off with a style, so you need to have a style that's already been made. And maybe I'll quickly cancel this and just look at that again. If you haven't done this already, you need to do this before you do your attributes. So to start off working with your text, make sure you've gone to annotation and then gone to the text style option there next to the list. You've got the button to edit your text styles. Click on that. So make sure that your current text style has a workable paper text height. And that just means, by workable, I just mean a size that it's going to print. Don't worry about scale or anything like that for text on a page. So 3.5 means 3.5 millimetres. 2.5 would be okay as well. You can go down to 2 even. And again, we're going to fine tune it. As long as it's not 150 or 0.2, which you will work with sometimes, but again, we want a paper text height here. So 2.5 or 2 even, up to about 7 would be fine. So coming back here to define my attributes, you can see it's using one of these text styles as a starting point. Any of those will do, as long as it's got a text type like this. 3.5 is fine. I'll turn annotative off and then put in all of the properties I want. So this is for, let's do project name. So the tag is what you'll see on the screen. So I'm going to put proj with an underscore instead of a space. So proj name for project name. And you put an underscore because it doesn't let you put spaces in. It's a bit of a coding thing. Coding. Programming is what I like, but I know people want to call it coding these days. So I call it coding, and that's the reason for that. So the prompt is what it then asks you. Coding, so what I mean is there's a bit of programming there. That's why you can't put spaces in for certain things. So the prompt is, again, just what it asks you. So enter project name. Oh, to get the attributes thing, so you click on that little panel where it says block, and then the first button that comes out there. Yep, that's it. So here you can put spaces in. This is a question that you're going to be asked, and it's fine to have spaces there. Then the default is what it'll put in if you don't want to type anything. So there, I will put, again, so it gets a bit confusing, project name. Right? So they all might seem similar, but it'll make a lot more sense once you see it in action. So the insertion point, I'll leave that tick to specify on screen, and everything else there is okay. It doesn't have to be, it's just a convention that it is, but no, it doesn't have to be. Kind of tells you though that it's a tag when you see it, that it's in caps. So that's it, and I'll click OK. And then now it gives me a chance to place that because I left that option ticked to specify on screen. So I'll just click that point roughly in the field where it should be. And I'll go and do another one. So again, clicking on the same panel to find attributes, and this one will be drawing name. So prompt again is going to be enter drawing name. And then the default, drawing name. And again, I'll click OK and place that on the screen. If my tracking's on, is it going to pick it up? Maybe not, but I'll line them up exactly afterwards, so my eye should be fine. There we go. So we can just keep doing that for all of these fields, and yeah, okay, I'll do date one. So, okay, so date. So the tag might be as simple as date. Yep. The prompt to enter date. That's it. Yeah, make up a fake date for the tag or the prompt. That's right. Yep, exactly. Yep. Anything that's probably not a real date because let's say 1900 or something, and yeah, so that way you know it hasn't been entered. So that should do it. And so that's a good one for me to show you because after I place it, you can see it's too big for that that box really. So you can easily select it, right click and then go to properties, and then change the height after you've made it. So maybe I'll make that one 2.5. So that's why you don't need to have the exact height when you make them. And so it's easy to fine tune those, and we can do this for all of those fields. So that should be enough, I think, for you to do the rest. And then I will select that and again use that shortcut. Well, I could go straight to W block, but I'll do it with block first, just so you can see. So B for block, and so the name should be title block or even TB. I'll put my CC in front of it this time, just to give it a different name. So CC, TB, and the sheet size is probably the most important thing.
You did say sheet size, didn't you?
Yeah, the sheet size, yes. Yep. And that's all you need. So here, notice I'm not going to worry about clicking a base point because I'm happy to use the corner of the page as my base point for this block. So I'm going to leave that at 0, 0, which is the corner of my page, and then click OK. And you can see it gives me a chance then to enter these fields. So the date, let's put today's date in at least. Yep, that's right, exactly. Yep. So the drawing name, well, we don't know, so I'll leave that one. And then the project name, well, we don't really know that either, so I'll leave that. So I'll click OK, and you can see those fields have gone in. And it's actually, again, a good thing to check because you can see that the date field isn't turning out that well, so it's very close to the edge. So I'll go now to edit that block. So while it's selected, right click, and a good way is to go to edit block in place. Click OK, and then you get a chance to adjust those fields. So I'll just move that one across. You can change the justification. So in properties again, maybe I'll show you another way, which would be to come down to justify there and change that to right. And now I can bring that field over closer to the edge there of that box. And because it's justified, oops, sorry, that shouldn't have gone there. So bring it back. There we are. So because it's justified right, it'll of course type in the right direction now. So I've made my change that I want to the block, and I might, eventually do the same with these other fields as well. But for now, I'll just click Save Changes, and then OK. And now one little thing, this is actually a bit of a quirk with attributes that I've noticed. It doesn't store all of the changes you make to attributes when you're editing a block. It's just one of those things. So to make it work, I'm going to delete that block and then reinsert it. Oh, you might have just had the option chosen to delete. There is an option when you're making it to delete it. So that's not a problem. You can just, if it's disappeared, when you make it, just insert it. And that's a good thing to test anyway. So here you can see I'm going to insert my block, and I'm going to type 0, 0, and it's asking this for the rotation angle because I didn't turn that option off. And again, I'll just type 0 for that as well. And it's going to go in the same place. So the date, again, is all I need to enter now. 2019. So, yeah, so it's gone into exactly the same place, but you can see now that the justification of that text has been fixed.
When you say it doesn't save it, it's actually saving it as a block.
Yeah.
It does actually changes, but not on your screen.
Exactly, that's right, yeah. So, yeah, it does save the changes in the block definition, but not the one, the instance that's been inserted. There are technical reasons for that, apparently, but it's also a bit annoying. So I'll just go and show you here the page setup. So you can see that this one is A3 with, at the moment it's got the plotter. And remember last time I was saying it's good to use something like a PDF virtual printer to set up your pages, because then they're going to be consistent. And so I've just changed it to that. So now if I go to Layout 2, and let's get rid of the one that I did earlier, just so I can show you, if I go and make the page setup exactly the same, you can see there it is, then I can insert that block using the same insertion point, 0, 0, and I'll just leave that for now, and it will go in exactly the same spot. And I know it might seem like a minor thing, but it really makes a big difference when people are flicking through your pages, especially nowadays because they're all given out as PDFs. If things that should be in the same spot are in exactly the same spot, it's a really nice thing. And so it's not just title blocks, but many other things, particularly when you're putting your floor plans and they've got multiple stories that should all be aligned. If you've got the control to be able to line those things up precisely, and again, the page and the title block all tie in with that. So I might give you some time to get those title blocks and the other blocks finished off, and then can have a go at doing a template, and then perhaps get onto the details.